Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Z Time Chat, the podcast for Gen Z by Gen Z.
We're back! I'm your co-host, Maren, and that is your other co-host, Sofí. And today we are going to be talking about violence against women in the United States. And with that, Sofí, what kind of tea are you drinking this evening?
I am bringing back an old favorite, my Black Rose tea. What tea are you drinking, Maren?
Basic as always, I'm drinking peppermint tea.
Oh, fun.
And I want to correct myself. I said evening because it's evening for me, but it is in fact morning for you.
Yeah, well, it's going into afternoon, but yeah, definitely earlier than you.
Yeah. So it's been a while since we recorded an episode. So thank you to our listeners for being patient with us. And we thought we'd do just a quick check-in life update, although maybe that's too big. Just we'll stick with check-in. Sofí, what's up with you? What have you been up to?
You know, nothing much. The same old. COVID school, COVID work. So I don't know. It's a very, structured routine of staying home and doing school and then staying home and doing work. So I don't know. Nothing much. Nothing new. What about you, Maren?
Yeah. My answer is basically the same. I've been in the house and, doing some exercise, doing lots of school stuff, which is lovely as always, but nothing really has changed.
Yeah.
I got some new pants or trousers, depending on the country that you're in and what you like to call them, and they came today, and I'm so excited, and that's literally the most interesting thing in my life right now.
The highlight of your week, yeah. Well, you're going to have to show us the trousers at one point,
yes.
Maybe next episode.
I'm wearing them.
You're wearing them. Very nice. Actually, those are really cute.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you. And they're sustainable.
For our listeners, oh yay! For our listeners on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, they're red and super fun. So
they're red and corduroy and fabulous.
Yeah. You can't get any better than that. Anyway, going back to the episode. Today, I don't know if we already said this, but we will be discussing violence against women. And this episode, we will be focusing on U.S. violence against women. So next episode, stay tuned. We're going to go more worldwide with this issue. But we thought we would just, cover it as we can.
Yeah. And this episode should just come with a trigger warning. So if you are a survivor of sexual violence or you are triggered by this topic, we will be using, I don't want to say graphic language, but to some extent, maybe these topics could be disturbing to individuals. So just listen
Definitely,
with caution and awareness. And we will, of course, put some resources in the comments of this so that if you are experiencing violence or you know someone who is, you can have someone to reach out to.
Mm-hmm. And always take care of yourself. If it becomes too much of a heavy topic, take breaks. I know that, even we have to do that sometimes. So definitely take breaks. So the first topic, when did you know this to be an issue, Maren? Like when was this, kind of brought up to your attention?
Yeah. We always outline what we want to say beforehand. And so I've been thinking about this for the last day or so and trying to pinpoint sort of like the first experience I had with sexual violence or violence against women just generally. And I don't know if I can remember there ever being a time when I was like, oh, I didn't know what it was and now I do. But I think my parents did a very good job, and I grew up in a very safe environment. They did a really great job of sort of sheltering me from things like that. But it was always in my awareness just because I existed to some extent in the public sphere. And I was like, oh, that's a thing that happens to women. But the first time I think I was really talked spoken to about it in a very serious, practical way was in high school. And my high school had a representative from the YWCA, which is a survivor support network. I think it's national.
I'm pretty sure it's national.
Yeah. And they came in and talked to us about just very specifically like violence with intimate partners, dating violence, and just did everything. And that was the first time it felt tangible to me as a young woman. I was, I think, 15 at the time. I was like, this is a reality and something that is scary.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, piggybacking off of you, Maren, it's not, a specific event or, conversation that was had that I could remember at a really young age, but it was always a reality. And I remember even like comparing myself to my brothers or my, male cousins, and then seeing, the difference of precautions that was being taken. And obviously people were concerned about, the male safety as well, but it was more so focused on me and then, my female peers and family members. And I remember being like, even from like a really young age, oh, if you're going to go in that area, take your brother or take your cousin to protect you, sort of thing, because it was such, an idea of a reality. And even if I was like, oh, what if I want to go with like my cousin Anna, who is a girl, they're like, no, you have to take someone else who's, someone and it was always strange to me. And this feeling has stayed, even today, where, it shouldn't be that you have a male protector and like, oh, you have a guy with you, then you're safe. It's sort of like, this force field on you. And I see that even now, like, people will be like, oh, like the best way to ward off people trying to pick you up is if you say you have a boyfriend. And like, why would you lie about that? And why would you need that sort of, reassurance of a guy, is it me rejecting you enough sort of situation,
exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we're kind of in the same boat, not knowing a specific experience, but
yeah. Well, and it was like this strange thing, I think, and I think you're expressing something similar, where it was like this looming sort of like feeling that you understood when you were in public or by the way people treated you, but you didn't know why, but you knew that there was something that existed that wasn't okay. And then I think once there's some transition point when you, I think kind of when you become a teenager and you do more things independently on your own, and you may be in more like vulnerable situations, that you then start to realize, oh, why it is that people have been trying to protect me, or all of these different things. And you start understanding the reasoning, as illogical as it is. Do you remember the first time you were ever like harassed in public, like catcalled or something like that?
Oh, well, it would have had to be very young. It's definitely, something that is very prevalent. And even if it's not necessarily like a catcall, but like, oh, hey, like, where are you going? Or, like sort of, I mean, it's definitely a form of a catcall, but I think people think of catcalls being like whistling or, saying, oh, you're sexy, or, a variety of things. But I think it's also, there's a form of it where it's like harassment and trying to like follow you and being like, and obviously like, if you're like, oh, could I have directions? That's not, necessarily ill-willed, but it could be, there's, like this whole other, category of catcalling that, if you tell somebody, and especially if you tell a guy, they're like, oh, that's not that bad. Like, oh, he was just, trying to start up conversation. But no, if it wasn't, if it was like badgering, that's, kind of scary,
Right. Well, and sometimes it is hard to tell, because if you've had so many negative experience and, the stereotype has been reinforced to you so many times, it's hard sometimes to be trusting and be like, oh yeah, that I want to say individual, but in my experience, I've only had it happen from men. So that I remember the first time of being scared or feeling really violated by a catcall I was in high school, I think freshman or sophomore year, and I was walking home from school wearing, I might add, my high school uniform. So I obviously was like a student. I was a child
Yeah.
walking home
Yeah.
with my backpack in downtown San Jose. So you know what that's like.
Yeah.
And having someone lean out of their car window and catcall me. And that was the first time I was like, I really didn't like that feeling.
Yeah.
Like that felt unsafe to me. So I think that's sort of one of the times when this concept sort of like solidified as a reality for me in my life.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And it's funny because you could go your whole life not experiencing something like that, or even anything worse, but
Mm-hmm.
then still having that, feeling of fear and stuff.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know. Yeah. It's interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we've sort of been talking about um like for us what we've experienced or what we've like been aware of in our own life, but I think it's prudent to sort of I don't know, discuss or understand the term that we're using, which is violence against women and girls, and understand what that means in case you as a listener, we may not have a common understanding between us what that is. So I wanted to give just a few quick sort of definitions, if that's okay. Because when we're talking about something, I think it's important to understand what it is. And all of these definitions are from UN Women, so United Nations. And basically, so violence against women and girls is a subcategory of gender-based violence, which is any kind of violence that is targeted or perpetrated based on someone's gender. So that could be it could be violence against a man specifically because he is a man. It could be violence against a trans person because they're trans. In this case, we are talking about violence against women, which is, I do believe, the most actually no, I don't believe that. It is factually the most common and present type of gender-based violence. And so types of violence against women and girls, it's very broad and it includes a lot. So it includes sort of, I think everyone stereotypically thinks of like domestic violence and sort of the idea of a husband beating his wife or partner. And yes, that is one kind, and that can look like economic violence, that can be psychological abuse, that can be emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse. And it also includes like the extremes of, femicide. So like honor killings, which we don't really see as much in the United States. But we will be talking more about that later. But this also includes sexual violence, so sexual assault, sexual harassment, rape, corrective rape, but also includes human trafficking, female genital mutilation, another thing we don't see as much in the US, but it certainly still is there and needs to be addressed. Child marriage. And then this is a really important one that we all need to remember and be conscious of. So it's online or digital violence, which is cyberbullying, non-consensual sexting or exposure, and doxing is actually included in gender-based violence. So
and that's a huge one.
Yes.
And I think we know about it, but we don't, and I know I'm just kind of like pinpointing off of that one, and we'll talk more about the rest of them too, but the cyber one is a huge one because I think people know about it, but then don't know the route that they could take legally for that, and they don't think that it's that big of a deal because it could be worse, but that's still a form of violence and you're still being, violated. And that could be, with people, like you said, unconsensual sexting. And that's a huge thing that is kind of normalized. And I just think that's like the craziest thing. And even if people are then, I don't know if you mentioned this one, but like sharing unconsensually the other person's nudes, that's a huge thing that people are just like, oh, like what did I expect? No, you can't, that is, especially if you're a minor, if you're a minor, that takes it to a whole other level. So it is just kind of interesting the way that we kind of push that one aside when
Yeah, no,
talking about.
I'm glad you latched onto that one, because I think it is so important to talk about, because even I was actually sort of surprised, very validated to see this on the United Nations website as
Yeah.
at least characterizing that as violence against women, because it is so important, but it is so normalized. I think especially for our generation.
Yeah.
Who does so much dating and interacting online. Um, yeah, and it's an area where consent, where I think online, we're so used to giving our consent easily and readily and not thinking about how we're doing it on both sides. That it's a tough one for sure. It's well, yeah, it is tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. It's just crazy. And that, list of different ways that someone could be, assaulted or violated is just, overwhelming sometimes, that there are names for these things that
Mhm.
shouldn't be things.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just really crazy. Um
I think that's one of the
uh,
reasons. Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
I think that's one of the reasons it's so hard to understand when you're young, because it seems so impossible, so illogical. There's no rational explanation because it doesn't
Yeah.
make sense. And you have to be older in order to sort of grapple that, like, this is it. Although I'm speaking from a place of immense privilege when I say that, because I didn't really have exposure to those kind of things when I was young. And that's not a reality for a lot of people. So I do recognize that is coming from a uniquely privileged place that I am in.
Yeah, and going back to what you had said earlier about like child marriages, and then
Mm-hmm.
genital mutilation, and not being so seen in the US.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually seen a lot of cases, not recently, but in the past few years, about that subject.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's more of an issue that we see
Mm-hmm.
than we see, because that's something very private in a lot of cultures. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't think we would see that as frequently.
Mm-hmm.
So even though we see it a lot here, is what
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to say, there
Yeah.
is more to that story. I don't think
Yeah.
it's such a small issue than we
Yeah.
think, if that makes sense.
Definitely child marriage is actually pretty, I don't want to say frequent, but it is definitely a reality in the United States. And there's been a lot of activism around that. Really, in the last couple of months, I've started to observe a lot of campaigns about ending child marriage,
Yeah.
and understanding that it may look different in the United States than what we're used to, sort of stereotyping as the way it looks like, definitely in other cultures and in other places in the world. Um, but I just want to go back and highlight a couple other forms of violence that I think
Yeah.
may be under discussed or understood, and I think it's important to just sort of bring these to the forefront. Looking at the economic abuse as violence, and emotional and psychological abuse, because I really think we need to break that stereotype of violence looking one way as sort of like being physically abused, but no, it can be psychological abuse, it can be emotional
Definitely.
abuse, and it can be withholding resources or being overly controlling of resources. And I think that those are really not, I think statistically those are really common ways that specifically women experience violence in intimate in intimate partner relationships.
Yeah.
And just an addendum to that, it is important to note that although generally cases of domestic abuse with an intimate partner are underrepresented in same-sex couples, or underreported in same-sex couples, they actually tend to happen at the same rate. So just an important thing to sort of break the stereotype of violence looking one way.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to go off of from that. Well, and when talking about like economic abuse, that brings up a lot in my mind, because you're right, it could definitely be withholding resources in an intimate partner relationship,
Mm-hmm.
but it could also, be a workplace situation,
Mm-hmm.
um, like I don't know, there's a lot going on right now about, women in the workplace
Mm-hmm.
and their rights and stuff. But that's still a major issue,
Mm-hmm.
withholding, different positions for them. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, like docking pay for really dumb things. I was reading this like crazy article about this woman who had to I don't know if she had to like go give birth or she was dealing with her baby. I forget, but something very, mundane and necessary. And her boss, just like completely withheld sick time from her, which
Mm-hmm.
she had because it was, like this insane situation. So that's definitely, a type of economic abuse, I believe.
Yeah, exactly. And it can look like so many different things that you don't characterize as violence, but that could be family or um, a guardian or parent choosing to fund one individual's, like one child's activities based on their gender,
Yeah.
and then not for the other, saying, oh, we'll pay
Yeah.
for soccer or college for our son, but our
Yeah.
daughter is not going to get those resources.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but that's a huge thing that
Yeah.
has happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's just crazy, the different forms and the different, things that could look like.
And just in case anyone listening is not convinced that these are real issues in the United States that we face, I'm going to share some statistics. I just want to give you a heads up. They are very alarming. So just be prepared, drink some tea, take a deep breath, whatever you need to do. Um, so in 2005, 1,181 women were murdered by an intimate partner in the United States. And that's an average of 3 women every day in that year. And then in 2006, over 200,000 women were raped or sexually assaulted. And that's according to the National Crime Victimization Survey. And just to break that down, that is 600 women who were raped or sexually assaulted every single day in 2006. So those are
Yeah.
startling. That is widespread. And I
And
guess, oh, sorry. Go
no,
ahead.
I'm sorry. That, doesn't show unreported victims, which is a huge issue.
The second
And
figure actually includes unreported rapes.
oh, does it? Okay, never
Yeah.
mind. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, no, never mind.
it's
But
it's estimated. It's estimated unreported because obviously it's a
yeah,
difficult thing that way. But
yeah. Wow.
it is that's a whole tangent we could go down of looking at the process of reporting rapes or assaults, harassment even, and how traumatic that can be for survivors going through that process.
Yeah. Well, even I was gonna also go back to women killed by their partner. That could also be more than we know.
Mm-hmm.
Just, if it was either unsolved, the
Yeah.
murder, if it was if there was no, legal action taken
Mm-hmm.
from against the partner in any way,
Yeah.
if it was made to look accidental, um there's just like this whole I mean, people watch crime documentaries, a lot, and you see the amount of times where, the system doesn't work, and judicially the right person wasn't charged or the wrong person wasn't
Yeah.
charged. So
Yeah.
that's a huge number of people, but it could still be more. And I think even now more so. That was 2005. I don't think, violence against women at all hasn't, diminished. In fact, I would even argue it's become more of an issue. So
I
I
think
mean,
certainly during the pandemic,
yeah,
that's something, as we're still
100.
living in lockdown times,
Yeah.
it's important to note that reports of domestic violence have gone up because it's become an increasingly unsafe environment for
Yeah.
survivors who have been forced to stay inside in the places where they've been abused, or where economic resources have been taken away due to, loss of employment or stuff like that.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so
Even just like
it's,
the high stress,
yeah,
yeah, no, it's horrible.
yeah,
Yeah, there's just like this huge mound of, fallout of, the pandemic. So,
yeah, yeah.
and it's funny because that could even be said about the recession that happened a few years after
Mm-hmm.
that statistic was taken.
Right.
And I know, the 2008 recession was huge for a lot of families, but that could have, I don't want to say that could have, that definitely, raised a lot of stress around people's, situations, whether that be marital situations or even just like my partner lost their job and now
Yeah.
they want to take that out on me, sort
Yeah.
of reality. So yeah,
Absolutely.
that's alarming, but it's definitely higher, which is
Definitely. Definitely. And I just want to note, because I think it's important to source everything that I've been bringing up, that all of those statistics were from the National Organization for Women. And I'll post the link in the comments or description on whatever platform you're listening to this on. And I want to share one more resource that we don't really have time to talk about too much more because we're reaching the end of our episode, but I'll post it on Instagram, or I'll post it on Instagram probably.
yeah.
But it's this concept of the pyramid of sexual violence. And it starts out, it's just sort of a way of understanding how very basic, commonplace comments and behaviors and beliefs can lead up ultimately to like the pinnacle of sexual and gender-based violence, which is obviously like genocide and femicide. But it
Yeah.
starts at the very bottom base layer, with victim blaming, slut shaming, rape jokes, objectification, locker room chat or locker room banter, and bragging even.
Yeah. And we don't see that as like, super horrible. And I don't want to, exaggerate things, but
Mm-hmm.
that's, a really easy gateway to other horrible things. So if
Yeah.
you can, nip it at the bud, then nip it at the bud.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I definitely notice behaviors like that, even to some extent, slut shaming, unintentionally when looking at clothes or something like that. Like we all have work to do in that area. But just to sort of break
Yeah.
down, and this is from the University of Alberta, their sexual assault center. It sort of like starts with like beliefs and attitudes that you have just subconsciously. And then it moves up to the normalization of violence, through media, and in conversations, and then the removal of autonomy, and then finally physical expressions of violence. So just understanding how our commonplace behaviors can sort of transition into physical manifestations of violence that way.
Yeah, definitely. So to kind of wrap it up, what does that mean for women? And that's a very weighted question, like
Yeah.
a lot could be said. But let me give it to Maren first, because I actually want to show some craziness in my purse. And
what all of these concepts look like for
okay.
us in our daily lives.
Go ahead, Maren. I'm going to pop out.
Okay. So for me, I'm trying to think. I guess one of the most basic places to start is just like the consciousness that women and girls, and I want to say that includes trans women and non-binary people when we talk about this. It's important to note that. But it's just sort of like this nagging consciousness that you constantly have. Like for me and for my housemates, sort of the last month, this post has been going around social media in the area where we live. just reminding people to stay safe and lock their doors and windows and take precautions, because
Oh my
girls
God.
have been getting sort of like scouted out in public, and someone broke into their house and then they talked to the police, and it's been linked to sort of like this series of gender based like sexual violence and robberies.
Oh,
And so we've all been talking about this for the last week of like, how legitimate is it? How safe is it to go
yeah.
outside right now? And I generally tend to err on the side of, I'm a very like responsible and like conscious individual when I'm out in public, maybe more than is safe for me to think. But it adds a little bit of fear constantly. But
Yeah.
definitely I think it manifests when we're going out in public, definitely at night and drinking. You always have a buddy with you.
Yeah.
You're always watching your drink, all of these extra things that I don't think men, I would say cis men, tend to think about.
Actually, I was muted.
Yeah.
I will not pop out again because I have enough to show. But I was gonna say, based on what you just said, watching your drink, I actually have a scrunchie that pops out as a lid for cups, and then you put the scrunchie around. It's really weird, but it's something that is necessary.
Yeah. No, I've been
And
to so many campus events where they gave you little like beer covers for your bottle.
yeah, you're like, oh, lovely. This is definitely, necessary. So I would like to preface this by saying this might be crazy, but crazier. So this is my purse, for people who are not, visually watching.
It's a very cute purse, by the way.
Very cute purse. Thank you. It's my, adult purse. So let's keep a count. So I have a stun gun. I have this really cool thing that I bought from a TikTok, and you wear it around your wrist and you hold it like this, and then claws come out of it.
Oh, so it's like a more advanced version of carrying your keys between your knuckles.
Yeah, and it's comfy because it has like this cushion, and the claws actually are designed so that it catches the DNA, which is very important, and that's probably like the sell point for me. I don't know why.
And then actually, never mind. Go ahead.
Yeah, these are my work keys. Oh shoot, I don't have my car keys. Okay, my car keys are a whole other thing. Okay, so these are my work keys. I have an alarm and a pepper spray. Yeah, that's a fun noise. I don't know what's going on with my audio. And then I have more brass knuckles. And so I mentioned my car keys because my car keys are 100% a whole different ball game, because my car keys have an actual like shiv, a pepper spray, a flashlight, and then another set of these where they're like the brass knuckles. So we have the count. Okay, so the shiv, the pepper spray, the other brass knuckles. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I have like a total of 8 weapons in my purse at all times. And is it completely, I don't know what's going on with my audio. Is that completely necessary? To me it is.
If it makes you feel safer,
yeah,
then
and it does, and it's funny because people will, kind of like make fun of it. But I knew someone that I went to high school with, and this was kind of like before I had my own purse, so it was like I didn't have all of the weapons in my backpack, because then that would have been an issue. I had stuff, but I didn't have like the entire 8 system weapon, and I was gonna walk to like my aunt's house, or I was gonna walk somewhere after school, and she's like, oh no, you can't go without protection. And I'm like, oh, I think I have pepper spray in my bag. And she's like, no, but you can't go without like intense protection. And she opened like the front flap of her backpack, and she had like the police baton sticks. She had like the crazy tasers where it's like super big. It's not like the cute little pink ones. She had like rows of pepper spray. I don't know why she needed like multiple. I don't, that's me saying I have 2 in my bag, but it was, and And I had asked her, like, why do you feel the need to have all this? Oh, she had like switchblades and stuff. It looked like she was ready
Oh
for
my
like
God.
a riot. It was crazy. And she was like, you know, I forgot the story, but she had been like followed home a few times.
Mm-hmm.
And then her dad took her out and was just like, we're gonna get like whatever you need.
Yeah.
And so it's not just me, you know. And
Yeah.
I know people, you know, like my really good friends, I know that they carry a lot of stuff around with them and they take extra precaution. And you know, people might not think that it's like unnecessary, or people might not think that it's necessary, or it's, you know, um inconvenient, but it's just crazy, you know, that even
Mm-hmm.
exists, that sort
Mm-hmm.
of fear, and that, you know,
Absolutely.
and like why would you need to carry that, you know, like why would you automatically assume? And it just like goes back to everything we've talked about because of those insane statistics,
Mm-hmm.
and stuff that I've gone through and stuff that I know that people have also gone through, you know. And so it's just like that paired with like, you know, the constant slut shaming and the constant, you know, locker room talk.
Mm-hmm.
It's just too much of a risk not to take, you know,
Yeah.
take those extra precautions. So I don't know, it's a scary reality, and I think that people don't put, or okay, not people, I would say guys don't, you know, give their own um like 2 cents of how to change this, you know. Like there's always going to be the great guys who are, you
Mm-hmm.
know, like standing next to us and, you know, are awesome and are very willing to help in any way that they can, and to break that sort of idea. But sadly that's not the case. And it's funny because recently there have been a lot of like analogies about it, where
Mm-hmm.
people are making videos like, oh, like you want an M&M, just so you know 6 of them are poisoned, you know, do you still want it? Sort of thing, to
Mm-hmm.
show
Mm-hmm.
the reality of, you know, what women go through and the risk that they take um talking to people. Yeah, because it's so little to, you know, to aggravate people. And you know,
Yeah.
you read these horror stories of women rejecting guys, and we're going to get to this way more when we go international,
Mm-hmm.
and then them being found murdered, you know,
Mm-hmm.
or horrible things happening to them. So it's a reality, and I think more men need to step up and be not just allies, but very outspoken
Yeah.
allies for us.
Yeah. Well, and people I know, in terms of like anti-racist activism, a lot of people, instead of saying allies, use the term accomplice. So you're not just an ally in the fight, you are actively working to combat whatever it is. So definitely we need more male
Yeah.
accomplices.
Yeah. No, and
um
I really like that term actually,
yeah,
because
yeah.
talking about allies is just kind of like, what?
It sounds so passive, you know?
Yeah, like, oh, I don't hate you. You
Yeah,
know?
exactly. It's like, ooh, okay. I was really heartened recently. For school, I participated in sexual violence bystander intervention training. And I think there were like the both. I was gonna say both genders, but that's not the way to say that. There were a great deal of men represented in the training as much as there were women. Not like I knew everyone's gender identity or pronouns in the instance, but based on, yeah, I feel like I sort of dug myself into a hole there. But it was really heartening to see lots of men in that training, and I'll just leave it there.
Yeah. No, definitely. And pre-COVID, I had attended the YWCA's annual Walk a Mile in Her Shoes,
Yes.
where, you know, the guys had the heels on and
Mm-hmm.
and they were walking in support of women, and then violence against women.
Mm-hmm.
And I got my brother to go, and he's 16 now, so I think he was like 15 then. He wore like the craziest heels, and then my cousin Diego. So shout out to Sevan Diego. Thank you for doing that. And it was the coolest experience because they were dying because, you know, heels are crazy. And it wasn't just like cute little pumps. It was these crazy stiletto, you know, 6-inch heels.
Oh,
And
amazing.
they were like dying the entire time. And they were like almost, I don't want to say almost in tears. I'm not going to like embarrass them. And like crying. They handled it like champs is what I'm trying to say. And, you know, they went the entire way. And right after they ended, they're like, I remember them saying like a comment like, you know, I would have done like 20 miles, you know, if I could have, you know, some sort of, you know, like comment like that. And it just made me feel so happy. I have amazing pictures of us, and they're like leaning on me while they're walking. Also, maybe I'll post it.
I love that.
It was the cutest thing, and those are like one of my most cherished photos, because, you know, like the story behind it. And I was like smiling ear to ear the entire time, just knowing that, you know, I'm related to 2 great guys, and I'm related to many great guys, but just in that day, it was a really good experience. And
that's good.
you know, it was great. So
I think it's so important. Yeah, that's great. I think it's so important to share the good stories and the positive stories of healing and just like community around these topics, because certainly I think so many negative stereotypes and experiences are reinforced. And while it's important to share the variety of experiences, I do really appreciate hearing good stories, you know, of restorative justice and of learning and of healing, in this sense. And with that, it is time for us to wrap up this episode. And just a reminder, we will be, because obviously this is such a huge topic, we're going to be talking in the next episode about this in a more global sense, because this one was very US centric. But I would encourage everyone to talk about consent with everyone in your life, with the men, with the women, what that looks like in person, what that looks like online. Remember, no means no, yes means yes.
The fries of consent. There's a great sticker that Planned Parenthood, I know this is gonna drag out. I'm sorry, guys. And it's like the different fries of consent, and it's an acronym, and it's like, if it, like, what is consent? And it was like, forceful is not consent. Oh my God, my friend's gonna get so mad at me. And I like passed out these stickers at one of like the conventions, and one of my really good friends, Vincent, shout out to Vincent, I'm just shouting out all the great guys in my life. He was like, oh, what does this mean? And so like for the next, and he's, you know, like an athlete, so like for the rest of the year he was like, do you have fries, you know, sort of a thing, because it was the acronym. So I'll post a photo of the sticker to know that you have consent.
There's this great, I love that, the way there's so many creative ways of teaching consent to young people, and in the UK I've recently been introduced to this is the way most students here learned about consent, and they have this like iconic video, and it's referencing sex as tea. And so like it's this whole thing where like,
I've seen that.
If you asked your mate if they wanted tea, and then you made them a cup of tea, and then they don't want to drink it, you can't force them to drink the tea, essentially. And like all of these different ways of going around it. So if you're confused about consent, or you want some clarification, or just some good points to argue with someone who doesn't believe in consent, we'll post some of those resources.
Okay, I found it. So freely given, reversible, informed, enthusiastic, and specific. Those are the fries of consent.
Yes.
I think they changed the S recently to sober, because I know that on my sticker it was sober. But yes, so those are the fries of consent. So make sure to follow the fries of consent. And I'll post a photo of that maybe on our our thing.
Wait.
We're gonna do so many posts.
Yeah. It's good. I'm happy. All of the resources.
We're just like spamming you guys with like weird stuff.
And just remember, if someone reaches out to you or needs to share, give them the space to do that. This can be a really traumatic and personal, difficult thing to talk about. So let's be there for each other. And again, we will attach some resources if you've listened to this and think you might be experiencing any of these types of violence, or know you're experiencing, or someone you know is experiencing the types of violence, and how to get help with that. And we hope you, I hate to say enjoyed this episode, because it's not necessarily a joyful topic.
We hope you got something out of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, if not.
That sounds a little better.
No matter what, thank you for listening, and we're so glad to be back recording, and catch you next time.